This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
2009, what a year for Northwest Florida real estate. Prices down, homes slow to sell, foreclosures in every neighborhood. Well, how does it look for the year 2010? Good evening and welcome to CTC. I'm Lloyd Patterson. We just learned that American homeowners have lost almost $6 trillion in value since the market peak in '06. That's a huge amount of wealth up in smoke. Now, on the foreclosure front, in this area, notices of legal action sent out by lenders. In the third quarter, Escambia held about steady with the second quarter, but it was up from early '08. Now, Santa Rosa County saw a large increase over the second quarter to 356 notices, the most of any quarter so far. And then you look at Okaloosa County and Walton County. These are the total numbers of notices so far this year, and that's running ahead of last year, and that doesn't include, of course, the month of December. The real nightmare is South Florida, where lenders filed more than 7,000 foreclosure actions in the three-county area in just the month of November. Now, let's find out about the foreclosure situation in our area. Our guests tonight include Monica Agerton, certified credit counselor with Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Northwest Florida. She sees people every day who are on the verge of losing their homes. And Carlton Proctor watches the Northwest Florida economy from his post at the Pensacola News Journal, where he's a business writer. He has some 30 years in the newspaper field. Stacy Haynes of Navarre is in the business of making home loans. She's with Trident Home Loan Company. She has been in the field for some 5 years. And attorney John Adams of Pensacola is an associate with the Emanuel Shepard and Condon law firm, a former Santa Rosa County High School math teacher. Mr. Adams' legal specialties include real estate and bankruptcy law. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming in to do this program. We're talking tonight, if you just joined us, we're talking about foreclosures, what's going on in Northwest Florida. The numbers seem to be edging up. Monica Agerton, does this surprise you?
No, it does not. No, because the economy still hasn't recovered yet. So we're going to still see a steady flow until we have more people with jobs. Our job is unemployment is still up.
Okay, and one of the things that we'll be talking to Monica about as we go through the evening tonight is how people are trying to modify their loans and how you can get help doing that if you're having trouble making your payment. Carlton Proctor, are you surprised at all that these numbers keep slipping up, foreclosure?
No, not at all. I mean, again, it very much is tracking the jobs picture here, and we've got just a very depressed job market. 21,000 people out of work here in the two-county area, and probably half again that many that are kind of given up. So until the job situation changes, I don't think we're going to see any significant erosion of the foreclosure numbers.
Stacy Haynes, you're a mortgage broker. You surprised that homes are still going into foreclosure at the rate they are?
I'm not. I believe that now that lending guidelines have changed and everything like that, I believe that we're going to see a growth of new homes being purchased, and borrowers, since the lenders are scrutinizing the files a little closer, borrowers can get into a more comfortable mortgage, but it's going to take time for that inventory from these foreclosures to stable out.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the home inventory as we go on in the program. John Adams, you're an attorney. You work in the bankruptcy field, real estate law. I guess it's no surprise to you that foreclosure notices are up.
No, not at all. My firm represents a lot of lenders and creditors, and you see a lot of things. You see the unemployment that these guests mentioned, but you see a lot of loans that probably shouldn't have been made, and individuals that probably couldn't afford it, had proper documentation of income and those sort of things been required. And so you see a lot of still a lot of loans that have yet to go through the system that'll have to get through the system. And so unfortunately, from talking to judges in my practice, it doesn't seem like we'll see immediate relief anytime soon.
People who get these notices from their lenders, how do they react? It's not going to be a surprise to them, is it, that there's a foreclosure notice coming? Monica?
No, it's not a surprise, but sometimes the lenders have sometimes told their clients not to pay for 2 or 3 months, you know, to do the loan modification at that point. So they've done a very good job, the lenders have, of restructuring the paperwork that the clients actually will get. So we're getting more concise overall view from all lenders now, not just one telling a client this, you know, because that's very poor advice to tell someone not to pay your mortgage. And then you create another set of problems, and you also create the foreclosure amounts that are now tripled from what they were for the filings and for attorney fees and things of that nature. So that's what we're seeing. We're getting better education to the clients.
Okay. John Adams, I've heard that advice from a lot of people, and I'm sure you have too, Carlton. They say, don't make your mortgage payments, and then, you know, it's kind of just ease into foreclosure. Is that wise?
Well, the advice that I've heard, and I've heard clients tell me that they've received, is if you're trying to work a modification out with a bank, or you're trying to get a bank to work with you on a short sale, as long as you're making your monthly payment, mortgage and interest, your mortgage payment, the lender doesn't have much of an incentive to work with you. It's only when the loan goes in default that the lender will sit up and take notice, if you will. As Monica said, it's always wise to make your mortgage payments. You sign a note obligating you to pay it. And if you find yourself becoming underwater, there are always some options you can look at without just stopping making payments and allowing your lender to accelerate the debt, or to start accruing late fees and interest and attorney's fees if it's referred to an attorney.
Stacy, what do you tell people if they're having trouble making their mortgage payments?
Well, as a broker, I always tell my clients, if you can make that mortgage payment, make your mortgage payment. With being a broker, once the loan goes out of our hands, we have to tell our clients to talk to their lender, and the first thing we always tell them is, please call your lender. If you know, don't just let your mortgage go. Talk with them and see what they advise you to do. It's just open the lines of communication. Don't just not pay your mortgage.
Another thing you want to be aware of, and we want to talk about this some on our program this evening, is about these the shysters are coming along and asking people for several $1,000s, and we can fix your home mortgage. You've got to really be careful about that. Carlton Proctor, what's been your experience in this field? Do you have a daughter who's having some?
Well, like a lot of young couples, they bought in 05, 04 and paid a premium for their home, and have seen the value depreciate much faster than they're paying down on the principal. She's tried a couple of times to get a loan modification, and just I think staring at a mountain of paperwork and hoops to jump through, just backed off and said, you know, there's no point. So then you're left with, do I just walk away and have a 5-year credit impact, or do I just struggle, get a second job, bring in a renter? I mean, all these things. So I think there's a lot of people in that area that are struggling with that decision about what to do, what's the right thing to do, but then, what can I do? So there's a big difference in that.
There are many people in Florida who are, as they say, underwater. They owe more on their house than it's actually worth. Is that enough to say to people, okay, you're underwater by $50,000, contact your lender, see if you can get a modification? Does it take a person being underwater that much, or does it take somebody who just can't make the payments?
On both of those issues, if you can make a payment, but you see that your loan is totally upside down, especially in Santa Rosa County, I think they're seeing the majority of their property being so much undervalued now than what they bought in the last 3 or 4 years. But please do note that a lot of times people get frustrated with the paperwork, but it's a necessary piece of evidence that they need. Unfortunately, we also have the lenders on their side. They see a lot of falsification of documentation. So they have to siphon between those who are actually being truthful about everything and those that are not. And that's why now they require more paperwork for us as credit counselors and housing counselors to process. They never used to require 4506T form, which is a which will allow them to pull your transcript from IRS, because they said that fraud has been implied there, because people are still trying to go against the stream.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to get away with doing something, and it's paperwork. That's what it is.
People can't get loans anymore by coming in and just signing a form and saying, I make enough to pay this. That got a lot of criticism, and that's probably part of the reason that we're in so much trouble with our housing market today.
And that's correct. And the form that she was speaking of, the 4506T, is now a required document for every single file that comes across our desk. Every single file that goes to a lender, you have to sign the 4506T and do a complete, full document loan.
Carlton?
I was just going to add, I think one of the things that has compounded the problem is that a lot of these people that are underwater, upside down with their homes, they're seeing their homes drop by $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, but they're not seeing the insurance go down. They're not seeing the property tax, maybe just it might just drop a little bit. So their expenses of managing the home are the same, if not more. And yet they're seeing this, you know, every time they think about it, there's a $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 drop in the value of their home. And I think a lot of people just feel like, what's the use? And that's kind of a danger zone. I hope we're not in that right now. But, you know, if it just keeps going this way, I think you're going to see more of the same.
And until you see something improve around this area as far as the economy goes, that sort of cloud of discouragement is going to hang over the market, don't you think?
Yes, I agree.
Do you see anything coming up that would shift that? The administration has made a great deal about trying to get lenders to modify their loans to give people a break, but there are a lot of people who feel like it's just, like Monica said, it's just a mountain of paperwork, and I'll never get through this. And it's easier to just walk away from the house.
Well, again, you know, once it leaves us, we really don't deal with the loan modifications, and I hate to, you know, say something differently, but what we have seen is an increase in first-time home buyers and the purchase markets, but those files again are scrutinized a lot more closely than they were before, so that those borrowers don't get into this position.
Oh, if they'd only have been doing that a few years ago.
And I agree. Absolutely. I agree 100%. So lenders are taking steps to make a change.
Right, and I don't want to cast this as being all pessimistic, because homes are selling in Northwest Florida. Some homes I've heard have sold very quickly if they're in the right neighborhood. So it's not every house in every neighborhood. It's just real estate's a funny thing. It's one house on one block might look just like another one a few blocks away, but be worth $10,000 or $15,000 less. John Adams, your thoughts on what we've been talking about here? Modifications on loans. Is it best? Can somebody? Are they doing themselves a favor by getting in touch with an attorney before they start seeing credit counselors? Do people do that?
Yeah, it's never a bad idea to talk to an attorney.
Well, what else are you going to say? Of course, yeah.
It's our self-interest, but the credit counselors often are a good place to start, and sometimes you never have to get to the expense of an attorney, because an attorney often gets involved once you get to court, and if you get to a counselor early enough, you might can avoid the court, you might can avoid the cost of litigation, of having to hire an attorney, and certain adverse effects that can happen. You know, some people, when they look at the option of filing bankruptcy, it's good to go meet with a bankruptcy attorney so the attorney can advise you of your rights. But we certainly recommend, and of course I represent more lenders than debtors, but we certainly recommend always getting in touch with the counselors to see if you can work something out early on in the process, because you're much better off.
Are lenders impressed if a client has an attorney's letterheads representing them? Does that sort of move them to the top of the pile for modification?
Not necessarily. In fact, if they sometimes see an attorney, on top of the letterhead, they already think they're filing for bankruptcy, and all loan modification and everything stops.
Oh.
It doesn't go forward. So we tell clients just to make sure. But we also are fortunate in Escambia, Santa Rosa, and Okaloosa County to have a mediation system in place by the Collins Center. So there is another step. If you have felt like you're not getting anywhere with your lender, then you can request a mediation to happen between yourself and your lender and a neutral third party. And that has helped a tremendous amount of people get through because we still find that paperless is wonderful and we love it, but files get lost. And I have clients that have sent 6, 7, 8, up to 11 times to a lender, and the lender still says, I don't have your paperwork. And you have that much frustration. So if we get them into the attorney and the client and the mediator, then we can sort of stop that process, because the Collins Center has a specific order of documentation that must be gone through that session. Okay. And it's actually doing very well in our county.
If you just joined us, we're talking tonight mainly about foreclosures and what's happening in that market here in Northwest Florida. Monica Agerton is with the Consumer Credit Counseling Service, and we'll be showing a telephone number for them if you want to get in touch with it, because you are the mediation. You are the mediator. Is that right?
We have a wonderful lady in our office, Betsy Watson, that will go through those financial forms with you as many times as you need it, and we will meet you in person and go through those numbers to make sure that you are well prepared for your mediation.
Okay, and again, we'll be showing the numbers and the numbers for our other guests a little later in the program as we continue our conversation about foreclosures. I think, Carlton, there'd be, as you talk to real estate people, are they keeping their fingers crossed about 2010? They tend to be a cheery lot.
Well, yeah, I think they have to be. It's been an awfully tough time for everybody in that field of late, and one of the things that I hear, and perhaps John has a better handle on this than myself, but one of the concerns going forward into 2010 is we're talking about residential foreclosures here, but I'm hearing more about commercial foreclosures, businesses that are just folding up shop, walking away from loans. And I think that's my big concern, is that this is another, every tsunami has a big wave and then other waves that come in after it. And certainly this would be what I would call a tsunami. And so I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I hear that there's some banks here in town that are struggling with that, and I don't know, John, what's your sense
Our attorney,
of that?
John Adams, what do you hear on that?
We're hearing the same thing, that we're in the midst of a residential wave, and a lot of our present wave is from investment property that people purchase, but that the commercial property may be around the corner, which isn't, as you mentioned, is not really a good thing, but it's a reality that we're probably going to have to face.
And as you drive around this area, you see storefronts that were a few months ago had businesses in them and seemed to be doing okay, and now those places are empty. So you got to assume that whoever the property owner is not making any money off that, and how many of them, if they own too many of them, it won't take very long for them to get into some hot water. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do they have the same protections as homeowners do when they come into trouble on their borrowing?
When you say protections, if you're referring to the mediation that we were talking about earlier, that originated from an administrative order Judge Skavatsky entered for all foreclosures filed in our circuit, which is Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, and Walton County. And that order applied only to residential owner-occupied structures. In other words, people's homes, for the public policy reason of trying to protect people's homes. At present, those protections are not in place for commercial loans and commercial structures, and I don't really see where they would be. You know, these are business people, investors who own property, and the same public policy reasons aren't served by trying to help someone work out their home where they're raising their family as to someone who's holding investment property.
Okay. On the plus side here, we do have money if you are going to be buying and looking to buy a house in this area. There's money. I can't believe how cheap it is for mortgage rates if you can qualify. 5%.
Under
5%. Isn't that incredible, Carlton? I can remember when I felt like we were getting a good deal to get 12% on a home loan. That was wow. You know, that was great because they'd been 13, 14, 15%. 5%. Do people appreciate how low that is? You'd think things would be flying out of here, wouldn't you, Carlton?
Well, you know, that you would, and we'd all hope for that. I think one of the underlying problems that we don't talk a lot about is that we, you know, the census is coming up next year. We have had less than 2% population growth in Escambia County over the last decade. And so when you look at, you know, we're building homes as if we're growing by 5 or 10% every year, but until we can really grow this county and improve the, not improve, but increase the population, and then bring in new jobs and new businesses and things like that, it's you know, I just don't think we're going to see any sort of real surge in growth. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's very much a factor in all this.
Yeah, a few years ago, builders were putting up homes like this area was going to double in the next 10 years, it seemed like.
I used to ask myself all the time, I'd see the condos and the houses, and I was thinking, where are all these people coming from? Because I didn't see them, and I didn't hear about, there was no new, you know, it's great that we've got Navy Federal out there, and that's certainly been a shot in the arm, but for every Navy Federal, there's a Solutia that's laying off hundreds of people. So we have a real challenge ahead in this next decade to find jobs, sustainable jobs that are going to stay, not call center jobs, but things that are going to stay here and grow, and companies that can grow with it. And until that happens, I don't see a lot of growth in the housing sector.
Yeah, the jobs, if the job situation would improve, it could sort of correct everything else that's wrong.
It would start it. It certainly would
the
start
economy.
The ball rolling, yeah.
There are, let's talk a little bit about what you're hearing about fraud. We've seen in some news stories people being told they get a phone call and somebody will say, you give me $1,000, $2,000, and I can square away your loan, I can take care of everything, and that's the last they've heard of those people. Yeah. Monica, have you heard of these cases?
We have people that come into our office all the time. I had one elderly gentleman that was defrauded $4,000 by one of these scams that guaranteed, you know, and once we looked at the paperwork, fortunately we were able to get a portion of his money back through the help of several different agencies, the Attorney General in California where it originated from. And so we were able to get about $3,500 of his money back for him.
Good.
But people are very desperate. And a lot of people, just like when you go on TV and you watch cable and you see, you know, you can get a house for $1,000. It's foreclosure for this. You know, I want to buy a foreclosure home. That's what I want. And you have to caution people. You know, it's like a used car. Once you walk through the door, it's yours, warts and all. And it's just still the same thing, that it's just the education process. And that's why we do the first-time homebuyers class. You know, it's from 9 to 3 every other Friday, and it's to help people know the ins and outs before they go to Tracy and before they go everywhere else, you know, before they get into trouble. Because a lot of times you're like, if you haven't read that document, it doesn't matter what that person has told you. Mm-hmm. It's the document that's going to hold up in court, not what someone has told you. And everyone says, well, you know, I said, but they're salespeople, and they sell a good game, and 99% of them are just as honest as they can be, but it's that 1% that you're going to have to watch.
Mm-hmm. You really have to know what you're doing, don't you, if you're going to start buying foreclosures, because you could be buying a big headache with liens against the property. Don't you have to take that as well?
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's the reason why I completely recommend a title search done. If you're an investor, take $75, get a title search done. You'll see what is attached to those properties. You see if they have judgments. You'll see if they have liens. It takes a seasoned investor to really make money with the flipping of the properties and buying these foreclosures, but there is money to be made with these foreclosure properties if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I thought we'd never hear about flippers again. Did you realize this? There are people out there actually, again, flipping properties like they were, not like they were a few years ago, because the people didn't know what they were doing, really. They just thought the market would keep going up and up forever. But now we seem to be at a bottom, and there are people who are coming in and doing flipping.
Mm-hmm. You really have to have liquid assets, but you can get investment properties. You can get 10 loans again, but you have to have those liquid assets, and you have to have a really good sense of what you're doing. So, and again, the lenders are really scrutinizing those borrowers, but the money is there. The investment money is there. And take a class, take a first-time homebuyer class, take an investment class, get seasoned with it. Again, there is money to be made on that.
And if somebody calls you on the phone and says, I can help you with your mortgage problem, but it's going to take a couple of $1,000s up front, what do? Hang up the phone? Do you say,
oh, yeah.
Send me the paperwork? Carlton, you going to talk to these guys if they contact you?
No, I would hope that my do not call block works on my phone, but you never know these days. They find a way around everything. But anytime somebody asks you to pay money for something that normally, use common sense. I have been kind of on the lookout for the last couple of years. I've heard about a good bit of fraud taking place down in South Florida, Miami-Dade area. And I've kind of waited for it to get up here, but I'm sure there are incidences of it, as Monica mentioned. I have not heard of any exorbitant numbers of people being defrauded,
okay.
but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
I promised we'd give some information about how you can get in touch with our guests and their services. Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Northwest Florida. It has that second number is actually an 800 number. I may have ordered it wrong. It's 800-343-3317. And that's how you can get started. If you're in trouble on your home loan, these are the people to go to, because they're not going to be asking you for $2,000 up front. Also, we had with us today at Trident Home Loans. They're 343-0400 in Gulf Breeze. And John Adams, attorney, 433-6581. We thank you very much for your time and for joining us. Hopefully the next time we do a show on foreclosures, it'll be because the numbers drop down so much. We hope so anyway. Thanks for watching. I'm Lloyd Patterson for WSRE.